Hi. Hello and welcome to Cabot Media. I'm Grant. And today we're going to be working on our scene with this funny man and this huge monster. So we're continuing to model the man, and in this episode we're going to be looking at edit mode and manipulating our shapes. So here's where we got up to last time, and we're going to make the hair this time. And we're going to go to side view for this and just duplicate one of these, Shift D, move it up to around here, and let's look at top view this time. Top view is 7 on your numpad, or press the Z key there, and I'm going to grab to the middle, somewhere around there, and scale it. Duplicate one of editing our shapes. So here's where we got up to last time, and we're going to make the hair this time, and we're going to go to side view for this. And just duplicate one of these, Shift D, move it up to around here. And let's look at top view this time. Top view is 7. On your numpad, or press the Z key there, and I'm going to grab to the middle, somewhere around there, and scale it in the x-axis. So S, then X, and move it across. Okay, so he's got some hair there, but I want a bit sticking out here, as if the hair's overlapping an ear, which might be here. In fact, maybe I should put ears on, really. Let's do that. Let's grab this square, into side view again, Shift D to move it across to where an ear might be, somewhere around there on our rough character. 1 for front view, and you'll notice it's in line with this one here, so I press G then X to move it out so it's sticking out of our object. I could resize it so it's precise, but in this case it doesn't matter if it sticks into our other object. Shift D, X to constrain it to the X-axis and move that to the other side. So there's our other ear. Then let's select our hair again. So I want a bit of the hair sticking out over the ear and the hair to come behind the ear as well. In fact, I'm going to select both these ears and scale them in the Y, so S then Y, so the hair can go behind, and grab in the Y, G then Y, just so the hair can go behind there. So let's grab this hair. And now comes the next stage, which is editing our objects. At the moment we've just got cubes all over the place, but the hair is not a cube shape and we need to adapt this object . By going into edit mode. To go into edit mode, you can press Tab on your keyboard. That's the shortcut. I'll just undo that. Or you can go up to object mode up here, and you've got edit mode and lots of other cool modes as well. The two you will be using the most is object mode and edit mode. So Tab on your keyboard or edit mode up there. Now in edit mode, I can select the vertices like this and do exactly the same function. So G to grab. I can't rotate and scale vertices, but if I go to edge mode, you've got your modes up here, vertices, edges and faces. Let's go to edges next. So edges there, and I can select an edge and press G to grab and move that around. Remember, right click to cancel that. I can also press R to rotate, right click to cancel, S to scale, and right click to cancel. Which is great. I now know how to edit the shape, but I've only got 6 sides to play with. How can I create more geometry so I can get something sticking out the front here? Well, I can do what's called a loop cut. There's lots of tools now down the side here when I go into edit mode, and one of them is loop cut. I can click on that, and then when I move over my shape, it has this funny yellow line, and I want to cut it across here. So just play and move around your shape and see where it's cutting it. I can make a cut here by pressing left click and then click back on my select box to come out of the loop cut mode. So that's using the loop cut tool there. I can click and hold to see other options, but we'll stick with loop cut for the moment. Let's go back to the select box, and it creates a cut right in the middle of our other two. You'll also notice down the bottom here we've got a loop cut and slide menu. So any tool you've just used, you usually have some sort of dialog box so you can change things like the number of cuts and the smoothness and other things if you need them. We don't need to change any of those parameters at the moment, so I'll minimize that. And you can minimize and maximize with the little arrow there. So you'll notice this loop that I've just cut is selected because anything orange or white is selected. You'll notice the white is the last thing you selected, so that's the active edge. But if you shift select, then you can select multiple edges. It likes to tell you the active one. In case I undo that selection, you know which one you've just selected. So I'll undo those selections, and there's a quick way to deselect everything, and that's by pressing Alt A. If I press A, it selects everything. So Alt A is deselect all. And that's worth mentioning that Alt is kind of an undo of a command. So if I press A to select, to do the opposite of that is Alt A. The same as if I press H to hide. Let's select one of these edges and press H to hide. It's hidden that edge. But if I press Alt H to unhide. So most commands have an Alt option. So think of it like alternative. What we now need to do is get this face here. So I want to select the faces. I could go up here and select the faces that way. But let's go back to edges for the moment. I can also press 3 on my normal keys running across the top of my keyboard. So 3 to select the faces, and 1, 2 and 3 is vertices, edges and faces. So with faces selected, click on that face, and if I go to wireframe now, you can see that face on the inside there. That might help you. It's not always that easy to see in wireframe, so let's go back to solid mode, and the next tool I want to talk about is how we can what's called extrude this outwards. And you'll notice the tool down here, extrude region. It does give you the shortcut keys there as well, and that is E. So I'll press that, and I've got this plus icon here, and I can move it in and out. So somewhere around there, remember to go back to your cursor. So now I want to move it down just a touch. So he's sort of bald at the top and he's got this hair sitting on the side of him. In order to move my whole object, I could select all with A and then G to grab and move it. But can you see how my pivot point is staying in the same place? That's one way we can move our pivot point, by moving all the object and leaving the pivot point still. It's not a very efficient way though. The only way to move the whole object and the pivot point, if I undo that with right click, is to go back to object mode. So let's go back to object mode, G to grab and Z to pull it down into position, somewhere around there. Can you see how my pivot point moved as well? So if I grab it, you can see the pivot point moving with it. Right click to cancel that. So that's how we can edit objects in edit mode. So hopefully you can start to see how you can create more complex objects now. The next object we're going to try is the torch. So let's go to front view, shift right click, and if I just move around a second, you can see that the cursor didn't know exactly where to position itself along the y-axis. So let's go to front view again. If I shift right click on the actual hand and look around, the cursor actually finds an object. That can be quite handy, excuse the pun. So let's press 1 on our keyboard to go back to front view again, and this time we're going to insert a cylinder. Shift A to add, or the add menu up here. Shift A is my preference, mesh, and then cylinder. Now remember, you've got your menu down the bottom here, so there's lots of parameters for our cylinder. Remember, you've got a cylinder menu down the bottom here, and the radius and the depth. It's also got this cap fill type. So if we look at the cap, it's an N-gon, which means it's a multi-sided face. We'll have more about that in later videos. And it's got its location. Now this is a low poly style, so generally we don't want loads of faces, and if you can bring down the face amount, that's often a good thing, because the more faces, the harder it is for your computer. So we can bring it down to about 12, and that'd be great. When you're thinking about faces, you need to think about how far away from the camera the object's going to be, and how detailed you really need that object into account, and the radius and the depth. It's also got this cap fill type, so if we look at the cap, it's an N-gon, which means it's a multi-sided face. We'll have more about that in later videos. And it's got its location. Now this is a low poly style, so generally we don't want loads of faces, and if you can bring down the face amount, that's often a good thing, because the more faces, the harder it is for your computer. So we can bring it down to about 12.
Your number. All of my friends used to warn me about ya. Baby, I thought that I couldn't without ya. I got myself, now I don't need no other. I don't want the handbags, the money, or the diamond rings. Cause guys like you, they all don't care about the little things. So every day, 지구와 준초대. 근데 우지같이 웃긴 살았대, baby. I'm moving on and I'm never ever turning back around, around again now. I'll go higher and I'll go higher, and you couldn't take me down if you tried. But I might hit the eye, now I can finally open my eyes. Get out of my life, boy, all the lies and every mistake, all the goodbyes and the heartbreak. 가리키다는 믿었어 no more. Break. You ready? Let's go. Now I can finally open my eyes.
And that'd be great. When you're thinking about faces, you need to think about how far away from the camera the object's going to be, and how detailed you really need that object in terms of the amount of faces. So 12 is going to be fine in this case. Don't worry too much about radius and depth, because we'll be changing those in a bit anyway. So let's minimize our window, and let's move it into position. So S to scale, move it down to there. R to rotate by the X axis, because that's the one going across the middle there. And I can rotate it by hand, or I can press 90 for 90 degrees, which is far more precise, and then press enter. So R for rotate, X for the axis, and 90 for the degrees, RX90. What we can also do, if I press N on my keyboard, we've got an item menu here, and we've got all the transforms, and you can see there's 90 degrees there. So you could, if you know the axis, which is the X-axis in this case going across here, remember you can see that up here as well. I can then type in 180 and it will move it back, put upside down, or 90, which is where we want it. So you have got these options here as well, and you've got scale, and you can left click and drag and select them all at once and type in 1 for example, or 0.1. So let's go to front once, and you've got scale, and you can left click and drag and select them all at once. And you've got scale, and you can left click and drag and select them all at once and type in 1 for example, or 0.1. So let's go to front view, let's move this into position and scale it up just a touch. And now we're going to want to edit this shape so it's torch-like. So how do we do that? Have a think how I can get to edit mode. Tab on my keyboard is the shortcut, or I can go up to the top here and press edit mode. And I want to select the faces. The faces is already selected, but if you had something like vertices selected, you'll want to press 3 on your keyboard to get the faces. Let's select this back face here and move it backwards, G then Y.
This is big.
And let's select this front face here, and to make it a torch shape, we can press E to extrude. We could use our tools over here as well, but I prefer the keyboard shortcuts, E to extrude, and it does take into account the direction it's facing in terms of the normals as they're called. So that face is pointing outwards this way, so its normals, as it's known, is pointing out this way.
て人